Okay, let's dive right into some really fascinating source material sent in by a listener. This deep dive is all about the future of financial services, looking at stuff from an event called Wealthsimple Presence, the end of banking.
Yeah, and what's really striking right from the start of these sources is they actually begin with user feedback, almost like, these raw wish lists for what people really want with their money.
Totally. You see things like, I want a video game in the app, or, just a free money button.
Right, but then also the very real stuff like I would really like a house.
Exactly. And mixed in, you get these core frustrations bubbling up. I don't want to have to transfer my money here and there all the time, or just plain and simple, I want something better.
And the sources kind of use this to say, look, these aren't just random comments. They point to a deeper issue, maybe a disconnect.
A sense that maybe traditional institutions aren't quite hitting the mark on what people need today, like simplicity and control and, well, just feeling like they're getting ahead financially.
Precisely. It sets the stage by saying, okay, there's a problem here that people feel, and it needs fixing.
So our mission here in this deep dive is to unpack all of this. What's the main critique of traditional banking that comes through in these sources?
And what's the alternative vision they're painting? What are the actual features, the ideas they're rolling out to try and make that happen?
Right. And ultimately, what could this all mean for you, the listener, and how you might be handling your money down the road?
We'll dig into why the sources argue change is needed, what they actually mean by the end of banking. It's a provocative title. And then walk through the specifics they offer. Accounts, credit cards, borrowing.
Even bank branches, which seems kind of wild to question.
Yeah, it covers a lot of ground.
Okay, let's unpack it. Where do the sources start building their case for change?
Well, they kick off by painting this really stark contrast. They say, look, we live in a world that's moving incredibly fast. They use the phrase speed of light.
Speed of light, okay.
But then they frame the financial industry, especially the big traditional banks, as being stuck way back, like still operating in the steam engine era.
Wow, that's quite an image. Speed of light life, steam engine finance.
Yeah.
And what problems do they say this mismatch creates?
The sources list some pretty fundamental ones. Money is complicated, it's confusing, it can be expensive, and it's just slow.
Friction. Getting basic things done takes effort.
Exactly. And the material argues this isn't just an inconvenience. They position money as the tool people use to, live their lives, support families, make choices.
So improving how it works isn't just about business.
They present it almost as a moral obligation.
Yeah.
To fix it, to make it better, because it impacts people's lives so directly.
A moral obligation to fix finance.
Yeah.
That's a strong statement. How specifically do they criticize the big banks in the source material?
Well, they flat out say banks are maybe 30 years behind the rest of the world technologically.
30 years.
And a big point is cost. The material highlights that Canadians apparently pay some of the highest banking fees globally. They estimate maybe $300 to $500 a year on average just for basic stuff.
Wow. Per person.
Per person, yeah. And beyond fees, it's the slowness of money movement, the red tape around investing, those frustratingly low limits on e-transfers maybe. And a really key point, they hammer home. The money's sitting in your regular checking account. It earns practically nothing for you, maybe 0.01%, if that, but the bank earns interest on it.
Right. And the sources call that a tax on all of us, don't they? Like a cost everyone bears just for holding their own cash.
Exactly. So the alternative they're pitching isn't just, hey, here's another bank.
Yeah.
The vision presented is more like a total rethink, reimagining how those basic everyday money tasks work, paying bills, spending, saving, using tech to give people more financial freedom to build what those users ask for, something better.
Okay, that makes sense as the foundation. So if they want to rebuild, where do the sources say they start? What's the first pillar of this end of banking?
They start right at the core. The bank account itself. Traditionally, it's the central hub for everything.
Yeah, where your paycheck lands, where bills come out of.
But the material describes that relationship as kind of broken, weighed down by, like we said, high fees, often zero interest for you, and slow access to your own money sometimes.
And the alternative presented in the sources is this Wealthsimple checking account. They make a point of saying it's not just a new name, but a different experience.
Right. Let's look at what they highlight, first off. Fees. Traditional accounts, they say, are just full of fees. Monthly fees, low balance fees, fees for using your card abroad, ATM fees.
The list goes on.
It does. But these sources claim the Wealthsimple checking has none of those. Zero monthly fees, no minimum balance needed, no foreign exchange fees when you travel or shop online internationally, and no ATM fees at pretty much any machine in Canada.
That's quite a list of no's.
Yeah, the underlying idea they push is that the account's job should be to help you grow your money, not nickel and dime you.
Okay, and what about that point about money sitting idle, earning nothing for the customer? How do the sources address that?
That's where they talk about interest rates. They point out traditional checking pays, basically zero. 0% to maybe 0.1%.
Typically nothing.
Right. But the sources claim this Wealthsimple checking offers much higher rates. They mention 1.75% for their core clients and up to 2.75% for generation clients.
And they position these as the highest rates for a checking account in Canada.
That's the claim in the material, yes. So the message is your everyday money, even the cash just sitting there waiting for bills, is actually working for you, earning interest.
That really does change the function, doesn't it? From just a holding pen to, well, a place where money grows, even if just a bit. They talk about the app experience too, right?
Yeah, the source describes a redesigned app. The idea is that banking and investing feel integrated, simple, not siloed off. You can actually see the interest you're earning, track your cash back in the app.
Makes sense. And something a lot of people seem to want getting paid early.
That's in there too. They highlight that with direct deposit setup, your paycheck could land a day early, maybe even up to 4 days early in some cases.
Which means you get your money sooner and it starts earning that interest sooner too.
Exactly. Plus, they talk about automating what happens after the money arrives.
Like automatically sorting it.
Yeah, automated money management. You can set it up so your paycheck automatically gets split. Some goes to investing, some to specific savings goals you create.
And you can create multiple goals, like for different things.
That's what the sources say. You can set up multiple free accounts for specific things, maybe a renovation fund, a vacation fund, an emergency fund. And importantly, these separate pots also earn that same interest. And joint accounts are available too.
Okay, speed was another big criticism of traditional banks. How do the sources say this new account addresses that?
They really emphasize the speed of money movement, especially for large deposits. The material claims you can deposit, say, a large sum, even hundreds of thousands, and it's available instantly.
Instantly, compared to the usual multi-day holds. That's a big difference.
It's presented as a major contrast, yeah, removing that waiting period.
Interesting. Any other types of money movement mentioned?
They mention USD savings accounts, too, offering up to 4% interest, which they compare favorably to typical bank USD rates around 1%. Wire transfers are available now in Canadian and US dollars, with worldwide coming soon, apparently.
And checks. Still a thing sometimes.
Yep, mobile check deposit. You take a photo with your phone, and they say up to $5,000 can be instantly available from that deposit.
Okay, so that's a pretty thorough reimagining of the basic bank account. But, the big question is always safety, protecting your money. What do the sources say about security?
They definitely address that. Stressing security is crucial and shouldn't be compromised. A key point they highlight is CDIC coverage.
Right, deposit insurance.
Yeah, the Canada Deposit Insurance Corporation. Standard checking accounts usually have $100,000 coverage per depositor, per institution. But the source claims this Wealthsimple checking offers up to $1 million in CDIC coverage on eligible deposits.
So 10 times the standard coverage.
That's the claim presented in the source material, yes.
And beyond insurance, they talk about using technology for more sort of proactive security features.
They do. One is called Trusted Places. Basically, you tell the app locations, like your home or your office, are safe. If someone tries a large transfer from outside those places, it triggers extra security checks.
Using your phone's location for an extra layer.
Yeah.
That's clever. What else?
There's also verified contacts. You can designate a trusted person, maybe a partner or family member. If the system detects suspicious activity, like the example they give of a $20,000 Ethereum transfer attempt,
All right.
it would notify that trusted contact, prompting them to check in with you, make sure it's really you.
Kind of like bringing your support network into your financial security loop.
Yeah.
And they mentioned controlling limits too.
Right. Custom limits. You know how banks have fixed daily or transaction limits for things like e-transfers? Often they're quite low for security, but really annoying if you need to pay, say, a contractor $25,000.
Yeah, that usually means a trip to the bank or a wire transfer fee.
Exactly. The sources say with custom limits, you control it. You can temporarily raise your limit when you need to make that big payment, then lower it back down for everyday security.
So you're not stuck or forced into inconvenient workarounds. And where did these security ideas come from? Did they just invent them?
No, the sources make a point of saying these features, just like a lot of the other stuff we're discussing, were built directly based on client feedback.
Right.
From Reddit threads, support calls, user interviews, that kind of thing.
Ties back to that building something better.
Yeah.
Based on what users are actually asking for.
Exactly.
Okay, that leads nicely into the next pillar they talk about.
Yeah.
The credit card. The source material suggests there's a problem here too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. They argue that even though most Canadians have, 2 or 3 credit cards on average,
Sounds about right.
very few people actually love their cards. They're seen as complicated, the rules and fees aren't always clear, the rewards points systems can be confusing or don't really deliver what you expected.
And the claim is they're built mainly to benefit the banks.
That's the core argument in the source, that the complexity, the interest charges, the fees, it's designed for the bank's profit, and it leads people to try and, game the system.
Like using one card for gas, another for groceries, another for travel, trying to optimize.
Yeah, juggling cards to maximize points because no single card feels truly rewarding across the board.
So the proposed alternative is the Wealthsimple credit card. What's the pitch there?
Simplicity and real user benefit, according to the source. The headline feature they push is 2% unlimited cash back on everything.
2% cash back, unlimited on everything.
That's the claim. No categories to track, no spending caps, no complicated rules, just a flat 2% back on every single purchase.
How do they frame that compared to other cards?
They present it as just straightforward, no need to think about which card to use, and crucially, what happens to that cash back.
Right, where does it go?
It gets automatically deposited into your Wealthsimple checking account every month, where, of course, it starts earning that interest we talked about earlier.
Okay, so they call it free money earning more free money.
That's the phrase they use, yeah. The reward itself starts generating returns immediately.
That is different. What about fees on this card? You mentioned fees were a big issue with bank cards.
The sources say this card aims to get rid of many common bank card fees. A big one they highlight is foreign exchange fees.
Yes. The 2.5% or so that most cards charge on international purchases.
Exactly. The material states the Wealthsimple card has 0 foreign exchange fees, which, they suggest, means you don't need a separate travel card anymore.
Okay, that's a tangible saving for people who travel or shop online internationally. How integrated is the card with the rest of the app and account?
Very, based on the description. Sign up is apparently done right in the app, takes seconds, you get a virtual card instantly, you can add to your phone's wallet and start spending.
They have that anecdote, right? From sign up to latte in 2 minutes.
Yeah, emphasizing the speed and ease. They also mentioned Tap to Pay doesn't have the usual $250 limit that many cards impose, while still having security built in.
Interesting. Now, what about paying the card off? Given the critique that banks profit from interest and late fees, how do they approach payments?
This is a key differentiator they highlight. They claim their success is tied to your success, unlike banks that might benefit when you slip up and pay interest.
How so?
The material says the app actually warns you before your statement due date if your current payment plan means you'll incur interest. It prompts you to potentially pay more to avoid it.
So it's actively trying to help you avoid paying interest.
That's the idea presented. And making the payment itself is described as easy. Notifications remind you it's due. You choose how much to pay, full, partial, and it warns you again if partial means interest. Autopay is flexible, statements are clear.
And the balance updates right away.
Instantly in the app, yeah. With what the source calls a satisfying confirmation. Little details to make it feel smooth.
Right. And there was something about the physical card design, too.
Yeah, for their premium clients, there's a metal card option. Described as beautifully designed, feels substantial, and apparently makes a satisfying ping sound when you tap it, making everyday spending feel a bit elevated, I guess.
The little things.
Yeah.
Okay, so accounts, cards. What about borrowing? That's a huge part of banking.
Absolutely. And the sources identify similar frustrations here. Your bank knows everything about your finances, right? Your score, your debts, the assets you hold with them.
Yeah, they have the whole picture.
Yet, when you need to borrow, maybe against the value of assets you already have with them, it often involves this whole song and dance. Long approval times, tons of paperwork, maybe mandatory branch visits.
And often the interest rates aren't great, even if it's secured against your own money.
Exactly. It feels unnecessarily difficult and expensive. So the alternative presented is the Wealthsimple Instant Line of Credit.
The key word there being
Instant. The concept is pretty simple according to the source. Your eligible investments and savings held with them act as collateral. The more assets you have, the bigger your potential line of credit.
And the interest rate. That's usually the main factor.
They claim it's significantly lower than many alternatives. The source cites rates starting as low as 4.45%.
How does that compare?
Well, they contrast it sharply with unsecured borrowing like credit cards, which are often 20–24%, but also even with some secured borrowing like a home equity line of credit or ALOC.
Right. ELOCs usually have decent rates but require owning a home, having equity, appraisals, legal work.
Exactly. The sources position this instant line of credit as much lower friction and accessible based on your investment portfolio, not just home equity, with a significantly lower rate than unsecured debt.
And what can you use this line of credit for?
It's presented as flexible, renovations, bridging finances, covering unexpected costs, even just as overdraft protection on your checking account.
But the main selling point is the speed, the instant part.
That seems to be the killer feature they're highlighting. Setup is described as just a few taps within the app. No going to a branch, no signing papers, no phone calls, no waiting days or weeks for approval.
So how does it actually work, according to the source?
You apparently see your available line of credit right on your dashboard, calculated based on your eligible assets. If you need funds, you just tap, choose the amount you want to draw, confirm.
And then?
And then the money instantly appears in your Wealthsimple checking account, ready to use.
Wow. Compared to the traditional process for getting a loan or line of credit? Yeah, that sounds genuinely different, almost frictionless.
That seems to be the goal, removing all that friction and delay from accessing liquidity that you've, in a way, already earned through your savings and investments.
Okay, so accounts, cards, borrowing. That covers a lot. But the sources go even further, right? They actually take aim at the physical bank branch.
They do. They pose the question, isn't it kind of weird that here we are in 2025 and you still often have to physically go to a branch for certain important tasks?
Like what?
Like getting a large amount of cash, maybe opening certain types of accounts, handling aspects of buying a house, like getting a bank draft. It's just accepted as normal. But the source asks, should it be?
So the vision isn't just a better app, it's about making the branch itself obsolete.
Or at least bringing the functions of the branch directly to you, wherever you are. The idea presented is, anything you need to do at a branch, you should be able to do from your couch or your office or anywhere.
Okay, that's ambitious. How do the sources suggest they actually deliver on that, bringing the branch to you?
They detail a few specific methods. First, bank drafts. You know those certified checks you often need for things like a down payment on a house?
Yeah, that's definitely a go-to-the-branch task currently.
The source says you'll be able to order one right in the app. Few taps, enter the pay name and amount, confirm, and then they print it and courier it to you, often for the next day.
Okay, that handles one major branch function. What else?
Sending paper checks.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to pay your landlord or daycare, and they only take checks, but you don't use checkbooks anymore.
Common scenario.
The source describes mobile check delivery. You fill out the check details in the app, who it's for, the amount, a memo line. They print a physical check from your account and mail it directly to the recipient's address.
So you don't need to have checkbooks or stamps or even go to a mailbox. They handle the physical part.
Exactly. But then there's the third method, the one the source calls overcoming the branch's last stand.
Which is?
Getting actual physical cash. The source material literally asks, you can't get actual paper money from your phone, can you?
And the answer is?
Apparently, yes, you can. They introduce Wealthsimple cash delivery. You open the app, request how much cash you need, Canadian or US dollars, and it gets delivered to your door.
Wait, like delivered how quickly?
In minutes is the claim. Like ordering food delivery, but it's cash.
Cash delivered to your door in minutes. That's definitely leaning into convenience. Does the source explain the logistics or why someone would need that?
They position it as solving real problems. Maybe you need USD for a trip tomorrow morning and forgot to go to the bank and want to skip airport exchange fees and lines.
Okay, I can see the use case there.
And they also add, maybe slightly chiggly, that it's also just pretty fun, sort of implying that financial services can have moments of delight, maybe.
Huh. Bit of novelty. Where is this available?
Initially rolling out in the Greater Toronto area this fall, according to the source, with plans to expand to other cities later.
And if you run into trouble with any of this, ordering a draft, setting up savings, needing cash delivered, what about help? Branches have people?
That's addressed too. The source highlights that human support is available 24/7, which they contrast favorably with typical 9 to 5 bank branch hours.
Okay, so, wow. That's a really comprehensive picture they paint in these sources for changing daily finance accounts, cards, borrowing, even getting cash. But they don't stop there, right? They
Mhm.
also look ahead.
Exactly. The material teases the next big Wealthsimple Presence event planned for the fall. And they hint that if this event was about the end of banking, the next one might be titled something like The End of Investing.
The end of investing, as we know it, presumably.
That seems to be the implication. And they drop some pretty intriguing clues about what might be coming. One really bold statement they make is, the robo-advisor is dead.
Whoa, that is bold, especially coming from a company that was a pioneer in robo-advising in Canada. How do they justify saying it's dead?
They say it's being replaced by something much better. The material hints at more personalized, sophisticated investment portfolios, the kind previously only accessible to the very wealthy, and also providing access to new kinds of private market investments, which are usually off limits to retail investors.
So moving beyond basic index portfolios towards potentially more complex, maybe higher return strategies, and making them more widely available.
That seems to be the direction hinted at.
Hmm.
And for people who prefer to manage their own trades.
The self-directed investors.
Yeah, the trading platform is apparently getting a major upgrade too. The sources mention pro tools are coming, things like 245 trading hours.
So outside of regular market hours.
Seems like it. Also, real-time fractional trading and advanced options trading capabilities.
Okay, definitely catering to the more active trader. Anything else teased?
They specifically mention a crypto news announcement is coming, and importantly, they stress that all these new investing features will be seamlessly integrated with the banking-killing features we've just spent time discussing.
Making it all feel like one connected system.
Exactly. And crucially, the sources bring it back to the users again at the end. They emphasize that clients are their favorite innovators, meaning that much of this development, both what's been released and what's coming, is driven directly by user requests, feedback, pain points identified through those channels like Reddit, support calls, etc. They actively encourage people to keep providing that feedback.
It really does circle back to those initial wish lists and frustrations we talked about at the very beginning of this deep dive. This whole vision, according to the source material, is framed as being built by listening to what people actually want and need.
Yeah. So if we try to sort of boil it all down, the core message coming through these sources is really about fundamental change. It's using technology to try and make managing your everyday money spending, saving, borrowing way simpler, faster, cheaper.
And ultimately more beneficial for you, the person using it, rather than primarily for the institution providing the service.
Right. Moving away from a system that can feel like it's designed around the bank's needs towards one designed around the user's needs.
Framing these changes as tools to give you more direct control, help your money work harder for you, and just remove all that frustrating friction and cost that often feel like roadblocks. It's about delivering that something better people were asking for.
And building on that, the sources talk about this accelerating pace of change, this vision of a really personalized, integrated money manager maybe emerging. It does leave you with a pretty interesting question to chew on.
Which is?
Well, what does all this rapid evolution mean for your own relationship with your money over the next few years?
How much easier, how much more powerful could managing your finances become if this kind of vision plays out?
And if the friction and complexity really are reduced significantly, what does that simplicity and control actually empower you to do differently with your goals, with your life?
It's definitely worth thinking about how quickly things we currently accept as normal in finance might actually shift based on the kind of stuff discussed in these sources.
Makes you wonder what the landscape will look like even just 5 years from now.
Absolutely. Certainly gives you a lot to mull over. I'm definitely curious to see what that fall event brings regarding the end of investing.
Me too. It'll be interesting to track. Until then.
Keep it simple.